بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Good afternoon, everybody. We're at the Clifton Mosque and we are doing Islam 101 and Arabic 101. We have an Arabic learning student trying to learn to read the Quran. His name is Brian. We'll do that last because it's a little bit more instructional and intensive. But we do have some guests here from Macaulay High School.
Hi, I'm Jody. I'm Caroline.
I'm Aaliyah. And they have a project that they're doing for their high school on basically what is Islam. So I'll do my best to answer the questions, and if I don't know, I'm going to tell you I don't know. And I will reserve the question for the imam, because if y'all don't know, the imam is like the preacher or the leader of the community. You know, he's the person who speaks on the pulpit, he teaches, answers questions. His name is Imam Ismail, and he took the traditional approach to learning Islam. He went overseas, studied in various Arabic-speaking countries. We know where Islam is the head of day, the way of life there. So he had and he's American. He's 100% American. Born here, raised here. He's from New York. Lived all over the United States, lived all over the world. So he's a very cultured individual. I think a rare individual because he had a lot of different experiences. Just in life in general, but also after he became a Muslim. It's been, I think, about 15 or 20 years. So he was he was like a rare exception as far as people who come into Islam. He was Christian, and we like to say reverted, we don't like to say converted, but when he came into Islam, you know, he learned a lot, learned all the basics, and you know, just went through some of the motions and some of the beginner things when a person just becomes Muslim. And he had a deeper thirst to learn the essence of Islam. So he packed his whole entire family up, literally, and they went to, I think, Egypt. And you know, the story goes on from there. But they bounced around, and he sat with some of the biggest teachers, traditional Islamic teachers in the world. And in Islam, you have to have like a sacred permission to teach. It's a huge deal. It's kind of not the modern structure where you can kind of like enroll into a university and say, hey, I want to study this. It's in the essence or the base of Islam, it doesn't work like that. That's a whole conversation within itself. But how we see it, how Islam basically certifies or doesn't certify an individual is we have what we like to call a divine structure. And the structure goes as came from God, the revelation came from God and went to Muhammad, who is the prophet that we follow. And Muhammad taught it to his friends, disciples, companions, whatever word you would like to use. And they passed on to their friends, disciples, companions, family, cities, provinces, tribes, whatever the culture they were living in. And it just went generation to generation. And the certification process is, there's a list of names that they actually keep inside of scholarship, Islamic scholarship. And once you are certified by, I don't know the exact number, but it probably will be about 30, maybe 10, 15, 20, 30 other renowned scholars. You literally have to sit in front of them and they would test you on different, and not really like on pen and paper either. You would continue to learn as a student, you would continue learning until your teacher would say, hey, you know, this guy or this kid, they did very well. I think you should test him so that they can go and teach somewhere in the community or in the world or whatever. So you would sit in front of that guy, they would get that recommendation, and they would go, they have institutions, but they would go in front of another person or some people, and they would be asked questions. And when they are asked questions, they either get it right or they get it wrong, and they get the approval from all of these different scholars. And they put your name in this little long list. And Islam has been actively known to the world for about 1,500 years. So you can imagine how many names is inside, and also to mention, it's all over the world. So if there's a base, it would be modern day Saudi Arabia. It was just Arabia before politics became heavily influencing. But modern day Saudi Arabia was the base, and as Islam spread, the people from all the different countries and cities and provinces, Iraq, Syria, Northern Africa, Eastern Africa, Central Africa, East Asia, Far East Asia, not Far East Asia, but Southeast Asia, Southwest Asia, as they came in contact with different Muslims, learned certain things, they liked it, whatever the case, they all kind of flocked to Arabia because this is where it was sprawling. It was kind of the Manhattan of that time. And there were so many teachers and so many scholars, so many students, and they would sit with these people, learn as much as they possibly could for however long they did, and then they would go back. And, they would get a hut or a tent or a building of some sort and start teaching Islam. And be one person say, hey, I want to learn about this. And they learned and they liked it. And it just, went like that. And Imam Ismail, he learned like that. Not 1,500 years ago, but in that fashion. They travel to the places where Islamic knowledge is beyond a peak and sacrifice. So he's normally the one that does the classes. I assist him. I am learning from him. I learned from another individual. His name is Imam Ayub Muhammad Hansbai. He has the Westchester and Mason communities, the mosques out there. He's more so based in Mason. He's a little older, so kind of reclining a little bit more. So I learned from him in my 20s, and he taught me Arabic. He taught me how to read the Quran. I was not born a Muslim. I was born a Christian. I was raised Christian. Liked Islam, studied it, and converted. And he taught me Arabic. Taught me how to read the Quran. I memorized some Quran. Taught me some Islamic law, how to pray, all that kind of stuff. So that's just a basic introduction to how this little kind of class goes. So he would be a lot better at answering the questions, in its exact, but I can convey a general understanding of it. So I know y'all said y'all did have some type of itinerary, and I would like to get into that. What questions?
Do you have the paper? Yeah.
Oh, there's a paper.
There is a paper. We printed it out in case we forgot.
This is beautiful. I don't like to stand over people, so I'm gonna sit down, so I need to use this.
So what type of service do you have, and is it on how often, and what are you supposed to go to, and all that? Because it's for us, we're Catholic, and it's Sundays,
right, Mass, generally, typically, well, not even generally, typically, but specifically, our day of worship is Friday. Friday afternoons. As you all know, we have 5 prayers in a day. It's in the afternoon prayer. We have 2 afternoon prayers, early afternoon prayer and a late afternoon prayer. So it's during the early afternoon prayer. And the structure is everybody goes, I don't know if y'all seen that. Did y'all see the prayer area? Yeah, didn't.
I haven't walked in.
Okay, before we close out, we'll have to look in here. But there's just a big, huge carpet. Everybody sits on the floor, and they call it a khatib. The khatib is the person who gives a khutbah. Khutbah is basically a general address to the community, and that consists of pillars. Should be some advice or some guidance, some knowledge from the Quran, some advice, some guidance, some knowledge from the Prophet Muhammad, and or if you want to, most people do general knowledge, advice, guidance from the people who the Prophet Muhammad taught. They call them the Sahaba. Sahaba just means like a disciple, close companion, people who were very close to an individual, in this case, the Prophet Muhammad. They had a lot of knowledge. So you can never run out, you can never like get a PhD or doctrines in learning Islam. It doesn't exist because the knowledge is just so vast. So people pick from different time periods, different individuals who learned a lot, and they come and the Khatib will stand before the people and he will give them a sermon. And but it has to have that structure. It can't just be wily. It can't just be I think this mayor is a nice guy, so I'm going to talk about this mayor. And it can't just be what you want it to be. It has to have that structure so that personal opinion, personal feelings, that whole thing doesn't creep into God's word, advice, so on and so forth. So it's on Friday. He does that. It should not be very long. It's kind of short. Some people do make it long, but y'all know how that is. The idea is to get the people in, let them hear God's word, and let them get back to their everyday life. It may be like 15, 20 minutes, half an hour at most, for the most part. And then after that, we stand and we pray. The Khatib preferably would lead the people in prayer, or a lot of times you'll see a lot of places like here, Cincinnati, and just America period, where there's the structure is not like how it is overseas, where everybody's Muslim. So it's very diverse. So they have different people lead the prayer who are able to recite the Quran like he's learning how to recite the Quran, read the Quran in its original language. You have people who, I don't know if y'all know this or not, but it's a miraculous thing. They memorize the entire Quran. And y'all see the guy who does it here, he'll come through the door soon. He probably doesn't want to be on camera, but I'll point him out to you all. He's an Egyptian guy, memorizes the entire Quran word for word, dot for dot. Like, you can read it and you can be looking at it and he can be sitting where you at and you can be reading it, and if you make a mistake by looking at it, he can correct you from his head. So those guys are the guys who lead the prayer. And people stand in rows, however many people it is, they fill up the row, say if there's space for 50 people, 50 rows here, 50 here, 50 here, 50 here, so on and so forth. So, and it kind of dwindles down at the end of the prayer, and it's a straight line. And they pray 2 units of prayer. Have you ever seen the Muslim prayer before? No. Okay. Well, like I'll just demonstrate a little bit. We stand. I'm gonna go through everything, just to give you a general idea. We stand very straight, very still. Keep your mind focused on what the imam is the leader of prayer. You stand there. You stand and recite the Quran. This is kind of it's significant because it's kind of like how the soldiers like at attention when the general or colonel or whoever comes in. This is the idea we have, because when we go into prayer, we're like standing before God. So you don't want to be like, when you're in God's presence. As soon as the prayer starts, your body's calm, your mind is calm, and the imam or you yourself, when you are praying, you're focused on the words that are you recite the Quran from memory, however much, 1 verse, 2 verse, 3 verses, the whole Quran, whatever. And after that, they stop, you bend over, and then you glorify God while you're bending over. We have some words. The words is Subhana Rabbiyal Azim. This just means glory be to God, the greatest. We say that like in threes, odd numbers, 3, 5, 7, 9. There's a reason for it. Don't need to get into it. We say that 3 times minimum. We come back up. We also say something when we come back up. The words of Sami Allah liman hamida. God hears the one who praises him. Then we go on the ground and we prostrate like this. And we say things when we're in prostration. We say Subhana Rabbiyal A'la. That just means God, glory be to God who is above all. So you put yourself in complete submission when you're in this position. And when you we do that, and then you stand back up. You also sit, but it's not relevant to the question or the topic. So you sit, and then we stand back up, and that's just one unit. We do that twice in the Friday sermon. In the normal early afternoon prayers, we do it 4 times. That entire cycle of standing, bending, and prostrating. And the idea behind that, and this is why I learned, I could be wrong, but I researched it pretty much. But the idea of the different positions is to give yourself in submission to God in every form that a human being can possibly be in. So if you're standing, this is kind of relevant to just being in society, working, just everyday life. You're standing, you're doing stuff, whatever. You should be in a state of submission to God when you're standing. If you're in a lower state than that, bowing down, maybe you're sitting, you're watching TV, or you're in a car, or anything that was lesser than standing and moving around and doing things. When you're in a lesser form of life, you're in a submission to God. And when you're at your lowest form, which is in prostration, that's complete and total submission. It's kind of, but more so, the idea of, when the cops hop out and say, get on the ground now. They don't want you to do anything that's going to make them do something to you. They want you to submit completely. Don't make this worse than what it could possibly be. Kind of that mentality. When you get down in prostration, you are in complete and total submission to God. You have given everything up, given the world up, and you're giving it all to God. That's the significance of prostration, and I'm sure the imams, and they can explain it better, but just on a mundane level, that's pretty much what it is. After that, people leave. So that's the Friday prayer or the 1 day a week service.
Is the 5 times a day structure, is that structure always the same for, even though it's 5 different times, it's always the same structure every time, every part of the day?
As far as the prayer?
Yeah.
Yes, it never changes.
So if you're home, you follow on your own the same cycle, through the same process.
Absolutely, never change. It varies because there are different things that we are allowed to do in prayer. So if y'all ever get deeper into learning more about Islam, this stuff is surface based. But if you ever get deeper into learning about Islam, then you'll see all of the different styles of prayer. And I do want to mention that people get kind of anal about it. Because if they grow up and they learn from one person, they love that person, and he's chosen one style of prayer, he taught this person had learned to serve God and made their life better, they become attached to that person. So if they're ever taken away from that person or in another community, then and they see something different, they kind of freak out sometimes. But that's just the day and age, because we live in a global society. So, any more questions?
So when you say there's like 5 services, people just choose one to go to?
Or
there's 5 times a day?
Let me be a little bit more clear. There are 5 prayers a day, 1 service a day, but different mosques, like this one, has a time that they do it according to the members that attend this mosque. There's a mosque downtown, there's one in Westchester, one in Mason, a couple in Westwood. They all have their communities and they all establish it. There's a time frame. The prayer comes in at about 1:40, comes in at about 1:40 and it goes out at about 3 something or 4 something like that. So they have that grace time period to do it. There is rules to when it should be done. So according to whoever the preacher is of that particular mosque, it's his preference, and the community goes with it. So the weekly service is that way, but the 5 daily prayers we have to do those all the time, early in the morning. It's coming in like 5:40 in the morning. And you have until sunrise to make it. So whenever the time, I'm always at work when the sun rises. So I think it's about 7. What's wrong?
Oh, now, okay.
Huh?
It was saying trying to reconnect.
Oh yeah, just let it roll. Sometimes it gets interrupted. But each prayer, when the next one comes in, you should pray within that time frame. They all have. It's not a good thing to delay it. Like if you're not, stop watching TV and pray and then go back to what you were doing. So we have a truck. We make these big metal parts and stuff. So we have a truck that comes and picks up the orders and leaves. So we gotta, bust them out and before the truck comes. So we're kind of busy when the prayer comes in. But I have that grace period to make it. And sometimes I get off at 5:30 and I'll pray before I leave or when I get home. But I always make that prayer then. And then we have 2 night prayers. Early night prayer, when the sun goes down, you have about 45 minutes until it's completely dark. And then that's when the last night prayer comes in. But we do that 5 times a day, all day, every day. The only thing that changes that is death. There's no reason inside Islam to miss prayer. Prayer is like the most important thing inside Islam. Was that clear?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that makes sense. Yeah.
Any more questions?
If they wanted to come here for their daily prayer, could they? Or
Yes, it is highly recommended. Even some of the scholars go as far as to say, if you're not doing anything, like if you're at home and you're watching TV, you should stop and go to your mosque and pray. And the idea behind that is to build a community and build a structure, allow people to fraternize on a spiritual level. Because from our perspective, there's nothing more important than spirituality. So if people like hang out, have fun, and, party and stuff like that, that's fraternizing on one level, but it would be beautiful and great for humans to fraternize on a spiritual level. And the theme of that is prayer. So it is highly recommended that, and you have the regulars. Most of the time it's here in America, people work, so most of the time they're always here. You'll see them start coming through the door in a few minutes. Older guys, retired, and they have the leisure to come. Like if I worked close to the mosque, then I would take like my lunch break and come pray and leave. But it's highly recommended. Any more questions?
During like the Fridays or the prayers or anything, is there like music?
Music?
People sing or like play music?
Very, very, very good question. Okay, now we're going to dive into a little bit of controversy. I'm going to be as balanced as I can with the answer. It would be a better, I'm going to give a general answer and understanding. There's a specific and detailed answer that I have to leave that for the Imam. He's the one that has the authority and the right to go into that. But it's an issue. Technically, music is not allowed in Islam. So inside of the mosque, absolutely not. Reason, it's kind of a simple, logical understanding. The Quran has a general rule, and the general rule is, and the general rule in Islam is that bad speech is forbidden. Now y'all know how music is. So now that doesn't mean all music has bad speech. So this is the technical part to it. But the other aspect of it that is hard to deal with, especially in this day and age, is instruments. There are some reports from the Prophet Muhammad that said that he was sent from God to destroy the instruments, but it's not a strong report. As far as my knowledge goes, I could be wrong about that. But as far as I've learned, I've been a Muslim for almost 11 years. And this has been a focal point inside of just my personal, because I'm American, I grew up in music. Music is everywhere, so I try to learn the permissibilities to it, if so. But some scholars have gone so far as to put the rules to it because it's such a prevalent thing. And some other scholars have just said no, because they just don't want to teeter with it at all. Now, inside of the mosque, as far as Islam goes, is for worship. And the Prophet Muhammad did not. We stick with what the Prophet Muhammad was given in order for worship. We feel like that's enough, and he did not have music as a part of the worship in like ever. He didn't like do it outside of the mosque or in the mosque. So typically we don't, or not even typically, that's a bad word, I don't want to give y'all the wrong conveyance. We don't have music inside of the mosque. If you do see a mosque that has some music, then it's not traditional based, it's something new. So that's it's a controversial thing. You know, for the most part, people kind of keep it, if they do listen to music, they kind of keep it to themselves, or it's kind of like every now and then. But it's the best view is to kind of just keep away from it, because it can get, it's a thin line, because if you hear like some rhythm, you know, you don't have a choice but to move. And Islam doesn't like to get into mixing up the sexes, and you know, somebody hears some music and then they get to move a certain way. It's like, hey, that's Islam don't want to do that at all. And not to speak on behalf of Islam, but it's very strict as far as like fornication and adultery and those things. So.
And alcohol as well, right? Alcohol
technically
is forbidden. Technically,
no, it's out.
Right. So it's
yeah, it's out. There's a lot of misunderstanding with the prohibition of it in the Quran, because it came gradually. A lot of people who don't have a decent understanding about the Quran. It kind of was this type of setting where the revelation of the Quran came to the Prophet Muhammad. People were kind of just like partying and having fun. And, you know, they didn't have any, and that type of stuff. At first, it's not to come to prayer, because they learned to pray, and everybody's like, okay, we have to worship God, we have to pray. So don't come to prayer drunk. So they were kind of still drinking, but when it was prayer time, they wait and pray, and then we'll go drink. But then you're still kind of drunk when the next prayer comes in, so it's making it difficult for you to drink. Still, people were coming drunk, so God, seeing that they were understanding that they should not, they were at least trying. And then, the mosque was established, and that became popular. It was a platform for the Prophet Muhammad to share his knowledge that he got from God, so it was really popular. So people would come, they would come drunk. God seen that, he said, okay, don't come to the mosque drunk. This was like the club at the time. So everybody's going, everybody's doing it. So they couldn't come drunk and unruly. So it made it even tighter and even harder for them to drink. And then after that, God said, okay, don't do it. Because it tapered off. Because you have to pray 5 times a day. And initially it was not 5 times a day. As far as I know, it was like a couple of times a day, and at nighttime for the strong people. But people wanted to pray, they wanted to change, they wanted to learn, they wanted to become better, and people knew they needed to get away from the alcohol and stuff, so God kind of used that and said, don't pray if you're drunk. Because you don't know what you're saying. Y'all, everybody knows how drunk people are. Forget praying. You know, if you're just walking down the street, you know, drunk people don't know what you're saying. So when you recite the Quran, those are God's words. You don't want to just do gibberish with God's words. So that's the viewpoint as far as alcohol and music. Was that clear at all?
Yeah.
Because it's a technical thing. Because you'll find some people, you'll meet Muslims and they say, no, music is not forbidden. It's not in the Quran. But there's a lot of technicalities too. Like I said, when God forbade fornication, he said, don't go near it. He did not say, don't fornicate. He said, don't go near it. So if you're not supposed to go near it, then actually doing it is obviously forbidden. And as we know, everybody knows that, you know, people go to clubs, they hear music, there's alcohol, there's drugs, mixing of sexes, dancing, music. Not yet. They're getting ready to call it.
Dad, my arm hurt.
Okay, switch arms. You can take a break and pray. Was it everything kind of cleared up?
Yeah.
Okay.
So now, the way I understand it, like with respect to women, that wearing hijab is, you know, and I've heard the same thing. The Quran specifically doesn't say that women have to, but it's more recommended. But I know that some cultures it's mandated that women cover themselves. So what is your interpretation? I guess?
Yeah, which isn't much, but it'll just give an idea. If nobody understood the question, the matter of women cover. That has been a thing that is kind of new, that women don't have to do is kind of new. But to simplify the issue, there's a story about an eminent disciple of the Prophet Muhammad. I believe his name was Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. I believe it was him. It could have not been, but I believe it was him. A woman was chastised for tattooing and like tattooing basically. And this guy was a very well-known authority in Islam, and he told her to stop doing it. So she came back to him and she said, I memorized the Quran. That's not inside of the Quran. He was like, yes, it is. She was like, Now she trusted him because he knows what he's talking about. So she said, let me go back. Now she memorized it and she knew it. So she went back and I think she went back and read it like 3 times, the entire Quran, 6,000 plus verses. And she came back to him to argue with him. It was like, I read it 3 times. It's not there. You're not telling me the truth. And he said, he used a word, but the word is basically like if you were chaste. If you were a chaste woman, you could have seen it. And she was like, what do you mean? And there's a verse in the Quran that it puts the icing over the entire cake of Islam. And he told her that the verse is Ati Allah wa Ati Rasul. Obey God and obey his messenger. So she was confused when she heard that. It's like, well, I know that verse is in the Quran, but what are you talking about? And then he relayed to her something he learned himself, and the other companions and disciples, something he learned himself from the Prophet Muhammad himself. And the revelation of God is the revelation of God, and the interpretation of the revelation of God is different. Well, I'm sorry, it's not different, but it's not the Quran. This is what, I'm sure y'all heard of Sunnis and Shiites and all that. I'm sure y'all heard of that. The Sunnah is the way of the Prophet Muhammad, the way that he received the verses of the Quran and he implemented it in his everyday life. We have to follow that. So that's what that verse means, obey God and obey his messenger. And the messenger said he cursed the women who do the tattoos and things of that nature because he doesn't like, he had foresight. He didn't want women to over-sexualize or objectify themselves. That was the idea. It was not I've read a lot of stuff and heard a lot of stuff, and I'm sure y'all have too. It was not misogyny. That's an outside perspective of it. It was to protect the sanctity of the woman. She's not an object. Women have been made objects today. She's not an object. So when you put tattoos and you do the makeup and you do all this kind of stuff, it just brings attraction to a female, which obviously proves to be trouble. So that was the idea in it. Now, I said that to say, the verse in the Quran, now we have to obey God and obey the messenger. So some people have tried to find some space not to do it, and the style and everything that you see, that's not in the Quran. It's in the Sunnah of the Quran. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's in the Sunnah, the way of the Prophet Muhammad himself. In verse, there's a verse that says, "Women cover your bosoms," and what is and what is apparent was his job to interpret that verse. That's the actual verse. It was his job to interpret that verse, and when he did interpret that verse, he told them. The thing about that is the details of our commandments are not all in Islam. The details are there. So you can't have one without the other. This is the way that we eliminate person says cover the breast and whatever is apparent. That doesn't say hijab. Even support how they feel, use that. And they say, oh, that doesn't say that. The word that's used is that verse. That teaching from Muhammad. And it's someone that can be proven to be made up. That it came from him. From a person, all the way back to Muhammad. And the stuff that's here and say, Kabir said, nobody has to cover windshield. And people do this. People do this. So the way that we eliminate that is you have to be able to prove that you got it from somebody who got it from somebody. That's that line of names and teachings that I was speaking.
That might have gone past. You said it was kind of a nuance, I guess. It finally dawned on me. He said that the Quran, if you have technically, that book is not Quran.
True.
The only books that are truly considered Quran are only in Arabic, just because there's no translation. It's the original, and that didn't, because I have, it says Quran. It is a translation, so you'll see it. You go to the bookstore, you'll see 20 different, but they're not, right. And that's kind of a nuance that it finally just kind of dawned on me. What I was hearing was like, wait a second, because last week Imam Ismail had a Quran with him, and even with that, there's a cleansing the book. So the book is very sacred, but the translations aren't considered the same thing. And you said that, and I know what you meant, but they might not. It's a very interesting thing, and I just wanted to point that out.
It's a simple thing. And if I hear the call to prayer, I'm gonna run and pray, and y'all can kind of discuss it amongst yourselves. The prayer will take like 3 minutes, and I'll come back. If y'all want to leave, y'all can. As a matter of fact, you cannot. But as soon as they go to call to prayer, I'm gonna go pray. It's about 3 minutes, and then I'll be right back, and y'all can discuss it amongst yourselves. But on to what he said. Does anybody here know French? A little bit. Okay. I learned some French in high school, so it's probably gonna be bad right now. But I'm just trying to make an example. If I say "Je suis américain," and then I say "I am American," that wasn't French, was it? No. So it's just that simple. If this is Arabic and it's Arabic, then it's Arabic. And if I translate the Arabic into another language, it's not Arabic. It's that language. Simple as that. And a lot of people get it mixed up because they like to. It's confusing, like he said. You'll see on the copies of the Quran, the Holy Quran, or whatever, and then you open up and see that it's English. And he's learning Arabic, so he now can see the difference. I didn't know the difference either before I learned it, but once you see it, it is a completely different world. And every language is that way. Every language is that way. It's like if you learn French, the contexts in French are much different than the contexts in English or Spanish or any other language out there. So, and it goes even deep, even within the Arabic language itself. It is not. But the people, it's slang. You know, people, we have slang. You know, when we were in it, you all still in school, but early on in English, you know, he taught you to say no. You know, nowadays people are like, I ain't doing that. So it's like that. Like if you have Old English and this is the proper way, nobody speaks that way in America anymore. It's the same difference with the Quran. The Quran is the classical Arabic.